before we look at the work, let me take a look at the inequality side. Looks like an arrow, right? We can see it. It looks like an arrow, but what it is that on the big side of the arrow, we're going to have the bigger number. It's going to separate two numbers. On the big side of the arrow, on the open side, we have the big number. On the closed side of the dot, we have the small number. An example, 8 is greater than 3, right? 8 is on the big side, 3 is on the small side, because 8 is greater than 3. If I had it backwards, obviously, if I had the 3 on the left, I would have to flip the arrow, and I will read that as 3 is less than 8. So remember, I have 8 is greater than 3. If I was to multiply everything by a positive number, let's say 2, I get 16 is greater than 6. The arrow stays the same. If I was to add or subtract anything, let's say add 4, I get 20 is greater than 10. Nothing happened to the arrow. But now, let's assume I divide by a negative. Let me divide by negative 10. I'm going to have negative 2 is less than negative 1. Every time you multiply or divide by negative, that arrow is going to flip. Right? It was pointing to the right because 20 was bigger than 10. Once you divide by negative 10, I get negative 2 is less than negative 1. Right? We know negative 2 is less than negative 1. So once again, every time you multiply or divide by negative, don't forget to flip your arrow. Right, having that said, let's take a look at our work. Question number 1. The way I'm going to solve this is by kind of like how we used to solve our equations when they had the equal sign. Hold on, I'm waiting on this thing. It froze for a minute. All I'm going to do for the first 10, I'm going to add or subtract. So notice on the left side, I have a minus 18. I'm going to move it to the other side. And now my sides are going to split on the inequality side. Once again, I'm waiting. This thing just froze for a minute. There we go. All right, so let me split it to the inequality side. By negative 18, let me move it to the other side as a plus 18. So I have that n is greater or equal to 10. Right, negative 8, positive 18 is 10. So my key number is 10. This time I'm actually going to even fill in the circle because you see the little line at the bottom. So I fill in my circle. N is bigger because remember I said on the open side, that's the big side. N is bigger, I'm going to go towards the right. Because technically what that thing says, anything equal to or greater than 10. So anything greater than 10, I'm thinking 11, 12, 13, 14, anything greater than 10. So that's why I'm including all my numbers to the right. For the equal sign, so what we were looking at before, equal sign, it was just one number. N equals 3. That's it, just one number. Now it says n is equal to 10 or more. So I have to include 10 and more. So we do have to put the arrow because we're including everything more than 10. Let's take a look at question number 2. Let me separate them to the inequality sign. My negative 7, let me move it to the right, to the left, as a plus 7. So I have 15 is greater than k. So my key number in this case is 15. Don't fill it in because it doesn't have the little line at the bottom. So don't fill in your 15. Now my k is smaller because remember it's on the small side of the inequality sign. My k is smaller, so I'm going to go towards the left. I'm thinking anything smaller than 15. Obviously 14, 13, 12, like everything to the left of 15. My number line technically is in order. The small's on the left, the big's on the large. The big's on the right. Questions 1 through 10, you're doing it only by adding or subtracting. 1 through 10. Any questions on 1 through 10? Okay. Let's take a look at number 11. Look where the letter is. I cannot just move the 18 because it's part of a fraction. The way I'm going to undo a fraction, because a fraction means division, The way I'm going to undo it, I'm going to multiply by 18. That way 18 divided by 18 is 1, so that's how it cancels out. So I get negative 180 is greater than n. Right? 18 times negative 10 is negative 180. So once again, I have negative 180 is greater than n. So my negative 180, I circle it, don't fill it in. My n, I look at the letter, it's on the small side of the inequality sign, right, is where the dot is. It's on the small side, so that means my n is small. My small numbers go to the left. Do notice that earlier I told you guys, every time you multiply, divide by negative, flip the arrow. We finished with a negative, and I did not flip the arrow, because technically I multiplied by positive 18. So I multiplied by a positive. Our answer might be negative, but I multiplied by a positive, so it did not flip. If we look at number 12, I have a multiplication, so let me divide by negative 6. I'm dividing by a negative, so don't forget to flip your arrow. N is greater than 84 divided by negative 6 is negative 14. Do notice I flipped the arrow because I divided by a negative. So now my key number is negative 14. Don't fill it in. N is on the big side now. So N is big, so my big numbers are to the right. So once again, questions 1 through 10, we're only adding and subtracting. 11 through 20 are multiplying or dividing. You okay, man? And then the questions 21 through 30, it's mixed. Once again, the first 10 is only adding and subtracting. 11 through 20 is multiplying or dividing. The last 10, it's a mix. Any questions? All right, let me check 12 real quick.